Welcome into this Thursday edition of Pushing the Pile, Divisional Round Preview Edition, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We are previewing every Divisional Round game here on the show. Towards the end, we're going to get to a little draft preview as well. We're going to be ranking the positional groups. Yesterday was the deadline to declare for everyone not in the national championship game. That one's next week for those teams. We'll see who is in and out from Indiana and Miami. A lot of prospects on both sides, unsurprisingly, in that one. But we're going to preview each position group. Strongest, we're going to go weakest to strongest at the end. But JP, a lot of people say that the divisional round is the best week of football of the year. 4 games, always hotly contested. Would you agree with that assessment? Because we have that, we have the national championship as well then on Monday. Is this really the best football weekend of the year?
It's going to be tough between the divisional round weekend, wild card weekend, and then I actually think conference championship weekend in college football is super fun. But the divisional round, the games pick up intensity-wise. These are 4 of the best teams in the each respective conference. So I think the intensity of it, and plus knowing that these 2 teams, or out of these 4 teams, 2 are going to get the chance to play for the conference crown, I think it'll be really fun.
Yeah, I think at this point, it always feels like you get like 4 heavyweight title fights. Like the quality of football is such that these games always deliver, it feels like. There rarely is a divisional round game where it's just like falls flat. I mean, there's a lot of wild card games that do. We saw one on Monday night. But not a lot of divisional round games where it feels like someone just doesn't belong. I tend to believe, though, that week 1 NFL is the best weekend of football because of everyone's in it. This week, 8 fan bases are engaged. Obviously, every NFL fan. I think that's what really separates the NFL from, say, baseball, the NBA, is that once your team's out, you still watch. A lot of – I'm a Brewers fan, not a diehard, but like once the Brewers are out, I'm like, okay, I probably don't even watch the World Series anymore. But in the NFL, Packers got eliminated last week. Jags got eliminated last week. Most Packers and Jags fans are still locked in this week. It's just that's how it is with the NFL. It still seemingly matters. But I like week 1 because everyone is truly locked in. Everyone still has that hope. And then you have week 2 of college football as well, where similarly, every college football fan base is still very engaged. So I think that one takes it for me. But this one, in terms of quality, it's hard to argue.
See, I think it's actually the different. I think it's flipped around for me because a lot of our teams, like I said, Packers and Jags are eliminated. But that doesn't mean we stop hating on the other teams. The Bears and the Texans are still in the playoffs. So we have a chance, not only like if we're going down, we're taking the divisional rivals down with us. So that's sort of why I think the playoffs is a lot more. I think this is the best weekend of football of the year. Because if they're going home, we get to hate on them a little bit more.
That very much speaks to my core as a football fan, because growing up, I was definitely raised right in this regard. When the Packers beat the Bears, or when the Bears lost a game, we didn't listen to Packers radio after the fact. You listened to Bears radio. You wanted to hear the Bears fans complain more than you wanted to hear the Packers fans, gloat. So that was always, so yes, hopefully seeing the Bears get eliminated is still impactful to my life, I'll say. All right, impactful to other people's lives here, though. A fan base that was out of it long ago. New York Giants, John Harbaugh, Jordan Schultz first on the case here, reporting a potential $100 million deal, 5 years, $100 million to bring John Harbaugh to the New York Giants. At first blush, I was like, wow, that's like a little desperate. And why are they so desperate? And then I went back and I thought about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, since Tom Coughlin, the head coaches for the New York Giants have been a who's who of forgettable guys. Ben McAdoo, the first one after that. Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, then Brian Daboll. It has been ugly, and they want to turn things around in a big way, willing to do whatever it takes. It seems like $20 million a year, a hefty price to pay. But for John Harbaugh, he's going to turn things around.
So I actually think that's the biggest reason why I think this is a good hire for the Giants. I think they have been chasing that ghost of Tom Coughlin since Tom Coughlin left, and they haven't been able to get it right. This is the closest thing to Tom Coughlin that they are going to get, not only because Tom Coughlin and John Harbaugh were coaching against each other at points during their careers, but I do think he'll bring a level of respectability. I think he'll bring a level of competitiveness. And the thing for Giants is they just had to get up off the ground floor. They have to stop being the worst team in the NFL. And I think John Harbaugh will get the team from worst team in the NFL to at least competitive. I don't know if that's going to be like Super Bowl team or perennial playoff contender team, but if you're just competitive every year, I think that's a really good thing for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this is easily their most impressive hire since Coughlin in 2015. And for obvious reasons. I mean, he was, for my money, the crown jewel of this head coaching class. You just know you're getting organizational stability with John Harbaugh. Now, the interesting thing to me is not, will John Harbaugh succeed or not? It's what do they do with Joe Schoen? John Harbaugh, the rumor was that he wanted to pick his GM to wherever he went. Obviously, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case here in New York. But what's the leash like for Joe Schoen? Or do you think this is going to be one of those situations where the head coach gets say above GM, similar to, I think John Gruden had that sort of situation in Vegas when he was there over Mike Mayock. Do we think that Harbaugh in this situation supplants Joe Schoen in terms of final decision-making on this roster?
So that's something I'm really curious in, because not only did John Harbaugh want to bring in his own GM, but there's also rumors that he wanted roster control, full roster control. And it end up feeling like that scene with Bane in The Dark Knight, where it's like, are you really in charge here? Like, who's really in power here with the Giants? So I'm very curious how Joe Schoen's role changes within the organization if he stays, and also how long Joe Schoen has left for this job. I mean, it could end up looking something like Sean Payton and George Payton in the Broncos organization, where George Payton stays around when Sean Payton gets hired, and Sean Payton has a little bit more roster control, a little bit more leeway than George Payton does. But I'm very curious in a lot of what's going to happen with Harbaugh in New York. But this one with Schoen is one of the ones where I'm really, really fascinated by what happens with the power dynamic, because this could really end up being like Joe Schoen is around for one more year and then he goes and gets Chad Alexander like he really wanted.
Yeah, I would not surprise me whatsoever. And wouldn't surprise me if, like, in the meantime with Schoen there, that if he's, I don't want to say a puppet, but like if he's kind of just another guy in the room giving his opinion to John Harbaugh. I think the days of head coaches also being GMs is over in the NFL. There's literally just too much on someone's plate from an organizational structure standpoint nowadays to do both. I remember, why am I blanking? Rick Spielman, when he was with CBS, just talking about what he had to do as GM, like a lot of his responsibilities that you just don't see from the outside. You think of a GM and you're like, oh, they're just watching film all day, just evaluating prospects, evaluating talent. And like, they're just in a lab with a calculator and the salary cap trying to figure everything out. And it's like, no, he was, he had to do so much behind the scenes. He has to like deal with the press, deal with all these other things that you just don't realize. And so I don't think Harbaugh is going to want to obviously do that when he says he wants full control. But I still even think roster control and being the guy who evaluates talent on other teams in the draft, there's just so many hours in a day. And I think there's too much nowadays that you have to do to be good at both of those things, that you just need someone who sees the game through the same eyes as you do. As a GM, you don't necessarily need yourself to have full roster control, but you need someone that you trust wholesale as a head coach to know what your scheme needs, to know what you need on both sides of the football, to be able to delegate that. And I just don't know if that's going to be Joe Schoen.
Something else I'm really curious in with this hire is who John Harbaugh is going to bring in as his coordinators. I think that is the strongest point
Todd Monken
for hiring.
Yeah,
so
already sounds
Todd
like he's
Monken
going
is
with.
one of them. Okay, that's good. That's the good one. That's who I wanted them to hire, because I know a lot of people are going to point to like Todd Monken. Oh, this is good for Jackson Dart. No, this is good for Theo Johnson. That's why I'm excited about this. Theo Johnson stocks are going to be so high going into 2026. But the biggest drawback for John Harbaugh, for me at least, was, did he learn from his mistakes in Baltimore? Is he just going to run back his old guys that he continued to hire on both sides of the ball in Baltimore? Is this going to be we're going to bring back Wink Martindale, or are we going to run back Zach Orr or something? Like, is this going to be where we're just rerunning the Baltimore Ravens and bringing them up north and seeing if we can make it work this time? I don't think that's going to work per se. I don't think that just carbon copy, like copy pasting the Ravens offensive and defensive staff is going to work in New York, because the Giants aren't as talented as the Ravens were in their heyday. So I'm very curious who he hires on the defensive side of the ball, because the Giants defensive roster is a little weird, where like they have a log jam at edge, and they might have a little bit of a log jam at corner, but they also need more secondary help and more defensive line help. So how they address all that on the defensive side of the ball, and who they go out and get with the 5th overall pick. Now I'm very curious who's at the top of their draft board.
I will say this, though, about the Giants, specifically defensively. They're talented. They have good players. They were not put in good situations last year. Now, some of them are, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, they're not run defenders, right? Like you have certain guys who are role players in a way, but if you have a good DC, you can put them in the role that's most favorable. Like I do think that there is a good chance that if they make the right decision at that DC job, that this goes from top 5 offense to, bottom 5 defense to a top half of the league defense without much personnel change. That's the nature of how much coaching matters at the NFL level, and just how bad they were last year in New York. So I think this is right for a quick turnaround in New York, but we're gonna have to see it to believe it, given the track record of the Giants of late. All right, we take a quick break. After that, previewing all 4 of the divisional round games.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Let's start with Bills at Broncos. Broncos now 1.5 point favorites. 46.5 points is the over-under. If you recall, it started with the Bills as favorites. We discussed that on the Sunday night show. A little surprised. We hadn't seen the number 1 seed be an underdog in a while. Well, it turns out not a lot of other people were buying it either. Bills now 1.5 point favorites. Injuries to note, though, in this one. Josh Allen on the injury report. Foot, a knee, a finger, but he's practicing. He looks like he'll be going this weekend.
So outside of the obvious, the biggest thing is, if the Bills want to run the ball, can they just run it at will against this Broncos defense? The Broncos defense is built for getting upfield penetration. They don't really have, outside like DJ Jones, they don't really have gap control guys, especially on the edge, which is where a lot of teams can hurt them. When you think about the Bills game last year, they ran zone toss for like 50 times in that game because you couldn't set the edge. It's going to be a different game than the Jaguars game, because the Jaguars are a little heavier at defensive tackle and at edge, where the Broncos play a lot lighter, but they're able to get upfield and pressure the quarterback instantly. But I do think the biggest key to this game is going to be if the Broncos can run the football, and if Sean Payton is willing to live with RJ Harvey making mistakes running the football. Because it's been sort of unfortunate for Bo Nix, and we'll get to the Bo Nix of it all in this game, but the Broncos offense has played a lot better over the last few weeks, but they also haven't played their run game has been awful since J.K. Dobbins got hurt. And it has been because of the offensive line, because after Dobbins got hurt, the Broncos are third in the NFL in yards before contact per carry. That's really good. They're only behind the Rams and the Bears. But yards after contact, they're second to last in the NFL. Their rush yards over expectation, J.K. Dobbins is the only running back with a positive rush yards over expectation on this team. So RJ Harvey, who I think is the most explosive back on this team, he also, it feels like he doesn't trust his eyes when they run a lot of the duo, a lot of the inside runs. He's going to bounce a lot of them, trusting his speed and his athleticism. And I don't think that's going to be a game plan that works. So I wonder how much of this game plan is going to be Sean Payton getting him in space via screens, via outside zone, get him toss plays, or are they going to try and hit the Bills where it hurts the most, which is between the tackles?
Last year in this game, Bills, obviously it was a wild card game then, Bills ran for 200 yards. And it felt like the moves of Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga in the offseason were specifically to guard against just this, right? I think those were moves saying we need better run defenders at our second level to make sure that what happened that eliminated us from the playoffs. And now what happened also was they scored 7 points, right? The game ended at 31-7. But what happened to us where it just ran down our throats all game, like you said, that doesn't happen again. And I think they've been much better this year. Their run defense has improved dramatically. They're 8th in the NFL in terms of EPA per rush against. And those two guys are a big reason why, even if Dre Greenlaw's ability to attack downhill is in question by Sean Payton. Did you see that clip this week?
No, I didn't.
Oh my gosh. It was okay. You got to go watch it after this. Sean Payton's asked about Dre Greenlaw's ability to attack downhill. And he asked the reporter, he's like, what do you know about attacking downhill? It was so like such a dickhead move by a head coach, but it was great. But Dre Greenlaw but back to what I was saying, Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga can be the antidote for what ailed them last year and why I think this Broncos defense has more answers. And just because also they can load the box. I don't think they are going to be afraid with the secondary to put 8 in the box consistently against the Bills in this game. I just don't think they're worried about those explosive plays happening with the corners that they have against the Bills wide receivers, especially with Terrell Shavers tearing his ACL last week, out for the season now.
I also think having Hufanga and Greenlaw will help in defending tight ends because they have the speed to close down those windows. And when you think of Talanoa Hufanga, you're not thinking of like man coverage. You're thinking of him coming off the roof in quarters and tattooing somebody over the middle of the field. You think of Dre Greenlaw, you're not thinking about man coverage. You're thinking of playing zone coverage, closing those windows, and nailing a tight end on a dig route or something. So that's where I sort of hope that those two additions really come through outside of the run game, like you said. But I am very curious in if this Bills team tries to minimize that pass rush by using play action, because something that the Bills did against the Jaguars on first downs a lot was they would use play action on early downs. And that's where I think they really hurt Jacksonville on the offensive side. When they were on the offense, it was because they ran a lot of play action on early downs, and that was able to sort of take out the defense by chunks instead of, hammering your head into a brick wall.
Why do we think, though, this version of the Broncos offense that scored 7 points last year, why should we believe that they're going to fare any better against the Bills this year?
Because Bo Nix has quietly been a lot better. I mean, I think it's been unfortunate, again, for Bo Nix that the Broncos have felt like real shaky from weeks 11 through 18, despite Bo Nix playing some of the best football of his career. Like, it feels like the yin and yang again, where like Bo Nix comes on late in the season, because early in the season, he looked like a deer in headlights. But over the last few weeks, he has done such a good job with pre-snap recognition. And I think that's something where, I think that's going to be tested in this game. The Bills and Sean McDermott had such a great game plan for Trevor Lawrence post-snap, where I think Trevor Lawrence was really good at diagnosing what was happening pre-snap, but once the picture changed post-snap, they couldn't get out of it. They couldn't adjust. And I think that's something where if you show Bo Nix something pre-snap, he can identify it and he can get the offense into a right play. But if you change the picture post-snap, I wonder how he's going to fare, because that's somewhere where he's improved a lot this year. I think his command of the offense has improved a lot, which is evidenced by, like if the run game's not working, they've given Bo Nix the ability to just go out there and throw it. So I think with this game, it's going to be on if Bo Nix can diagnose what McDermott's going to do pre and post snap, because what they were doing to Jacksonville, they would spin to a lot of, it was so cool because the Bills don't deviate in what they do. They run so much too high. They run so many light boxes. They've been doing that since Sean McDermott got there. But how it's changed is they're more willing to blitz and roll into those too high coverages. They're more willing to play those non-traditional Tampas. So I think with adding that pressure while also changing up your looks, I think that's been a really nice addition to the Bills defense. So how Bo Nix undresses that might be the difference between them winning and losing.
Yeah, Bo Nix obviously had those rough few games to start the season, but from week 4 on, top 10 graded quarterback per PFF, 5th in terms of turnover-worthy play per PFF, and then 4th in terms of pressure to sack conversion rate. So he's taking care of the football, not taking sacks. That's a winning formula when, well, you have a defense as good as the Denver Broncos do. We've got to make a pick, though. Who do we see winning this one?
I just think the Bills are a really bad matchup for the Broncos. And despite how much they've improved, despite how much the offense has seemingly sort of improved with Bo Nix over these last few weeks, I just worry about him having to throw the ball 40 times a game because they can't run it. Whereas with the Jaguars game, the Jaguars ran for 164 yards. They just stopped running the ball where they could have but didn't. I worry that the Broncos will try but can't, and that puts Bo Nix into a lot of unfavorable situations. So I do think the Bills win this game.
I think so too, actually. And I think it's tight, and I think it's low scoring. I think one of my favorite numbers this week is under 46.5. I just don't see either offense really going out and putting together a great day. Let's get 49ers at Seahawks. Seahawks 7-point favorites. It's down from 7.5 where it opened. 44.5 is the over-under here. And some injury news. Fred Warner, limited participant in practice the past few days. There is a chance he plays in this game. On the flip side for the Seattle Seahawks, Charles Cross actually went from a full participant to a limited participant with a hamstring injury. Something to monitor there for the Seahawks left tackle.
There's no way Fred Warner plays in this game, right? There's no shot. I saw him break his ankle. Like there's no way he plays in this game, right? Like
superhuman stuff.
He is not. That is not a real person. If he plays, like I'm gonna have to seriously consider the idea of like a Fred Warner like body clone. They stole the immortal chamber from the Rams because there's no way he plays in this game. Like that's a little crazy. I think if this were the NFC Championship, then like maybe, but I mean he's moving really well. Like if Fred Warner plays in this game, I think that changes things a little bit, but I don't know how much it changes things.
No, I agree, because I think the biggest problem for the 49ers in this one is just putting points on the scoreboard. Is the fact that your offensive line is not good enough to block this Seahawks defensive line, because the Seahawks bring it from all 5, or you're all 4. And so all 5 of your offensive linemen, you're chain's only as strong as its weakest link. There's some weak links on the Seahawks this 49ers offensive line. And so when you have, you go 6-7 deep with the Seattle Seahawks of guys that if they get a favorable one-on-one, they're probably winning. It means every single time Brock Purdy's under it. And we saw that in week 18. And I think, unfortunately, not much has convinced me over the past 2 weeks that that's going to change, especially when you don't have George Kittle.
So the biggest thing that changed with the Seahawks game plan against the 49ers in week 18, the Seahawks were a lot more willing to play man coverage. They played, I think, 23% of their snaps in man coverage, which for the Seahawks is a really big change. They don't play man coverage a lot. They truly don't. They play man coverage on 15% of their snaps this season, according to True Media. So them playing man coverage on 24% of their snaps against the 49ers, that signaled we do not respect your skill position players. All we have to do is defend Christian McCaffrey, and at that point, George Kittle, and force you to go somewhere else. And Brock Purdy against man coverage in that game was, I believe, 6 for 8 with 24 yards, 6 for 8 of 9 dropbacks, 24 yards, and a negative 0.43 EPA per play. That's not going to get it done. And I feel like in this game, without George Kittle, potentially without Ricky Pearsall, they're just going to play man coverage again. Yeah. And if they play man coverage, it's going to be on Brock Purdy to make some throws, make some uncomfortable throws. And that's where I think the biggest reason why the Seahawks are able to beat this Niners team, the biggest reason why Mike McDonald, I'm not going to say like he has Brock Purdy's number or Kyle Shanahan's number. I don't think that'd be like super fair. But because they're able to defend the run out of light boxes and just house, their defensive tackles can just house their run game. They weren't able to run the ball last time they played the 49ers. And now you don't have George Kittle as a part of that. Now, if you're not going to be able to run the ball, you're not going to have Kittle. It feels like this game is going to be funneled through Christian McCaffrey option routes. But the Seahawks do such a good job of taking away dig windows with Devin Witherspoon, Nick Emmanwori. Ernest Jones is not the same caliber of athlete as either of those two guys, but he's played a lot of football, and he knows where the dig windows are. And then you have like Kobe Bryant coming off the roof. So there's so many guys who can close those windows and tighten those windows down. It's going to be tough for them to move the ball.
I do not think, if Ricky Pearsall's out, I do not think the 49ers really have a chance. As much as I'll probably regret saying that, and I've said that before about some 49ers teams this year when they were banged up as heck and they still won. But in this game specifically, the Seahawks defense is too good. And again, there's just no weak links. So when there's no weak links on a defense, you have to have a guy who can go above and beyond. And when you look at the 49ers skill position group, there's one guy right now that can do that. It's Christian McCaffrey. Ricky Pearsall, I think, could. I think he's capable of that. He is their best pure separator when you do see that man coverage on this football team. But if he has a knee injury that he's hampering and isn't 100%, well, then even if he does play, I'm not sure it actually moves the needle too much. You need him like fully healthy in this game if you really want to have a chance to beat that Seahawks man coverage. And if he doesn't go, it's just going to be tough sledding for this 49ers offense.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be – I'm not going to say it's 13-3 like week 18. I do think this one's going to go under. I think this one's going to be like a 17-10. I think it's going to be like maybe like a 17-3 or something. The biggest thing is I don't think the 49ers are going to be able to move the ball that well. But I do think they'll be able to slow down the Seahawks on the defensive side of the ball. I think they have made a lot of adjustments in their run game. And I think Robert Saleh's willing to play the chaos game. And I think he's willing to lean into some of his tendencies on 3rd and 4th down. They blitz a lot on 3rd and 4th down. They don't normally blitz. I think their blitz rate overall on 1st and 2nd down is like 19%. That goes up to 32% on 3rd and 4th down. They are willing to live in that chaos world. So for Sam Darnold, can you just keep the boat steady? You don't have to try and be a hero on every play. But if he's able to keep the boat steady, I think this defense can win this game.
We have not even touched on Sam Darnold. We probably should for just a second, because if you'll recall on last week's episode, the Sunday episode, I said Justin Herbert was tied for the lowest EPA of any quarterback in the playoffs over the last decade. Who he was tied with was one Sam Darnold. So he needs to just not, like you said, just keep the boat steady. Just not make because it'll take to lose this game 2 or 3 big mistakes for the Seattle Seahawks, in my opinion, to really throw this one away. So just you can make probably 1. Don't make 2 or 3 in this game. And I think the Seahawks will. All right. We're going to take a quick break after that. Texans, Patriots, Rams, Bears coming up next.
This isn't just combat. it's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go! Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
Texans at Patriots. Patriots 3-point favorites. 41.5 points is the over-under. Some injuries of note. Nico Collins has yet to clear protocol, yet to practice. Christian Gonzalez, on the other hand, already practicing, limited participant. Looks like he's going to be out of concussion protocol soon. Looks like he's on track to play. I think the first two games we talked about and this one are going to be indicative of a trend that we saw this year, which is that the elite defenses are outpacing the elite offenses. That the top end of defenses around the NFL kind of have the upper hand on the top upper echelon of offenses. And that we talked about, I think the first two games are low scoring. I think this one is low scoring as well. And I think who comes out and plays the best defense in these three games, ultimately, that's what's going to decide.
This game for the Patriots feels real similar to the Chargers game last week. While I say that while I do think the Texans defense is very much better than the Chargers. I mean, obviously it's the best defense in the league right now. But I do think some of the bones and how you're going to beat this defense are really similar. And then how you beat the Chargers offense is the same way you beat the Texans offense. I was doing some research for a story that I was writing about the biggest key to the game for the divisional round, excuse me. And Aaron Rodgers on Monday had the second lowest EPA per play under pressure of any wild card round quarterback since 2015. He had the second lowest. The lowest was CJ Stroud on Monday night. He had a negative 1.66 EPA per play under pressure. I think he completed like maybe 3 passes. He took 4 sacks. There was a pick, the fumbles, and what stood out the most from that performance was CJ Stroud was not looking to scramble. And I would never really say CJ Stroud was a scrambler or a runner at QB, but he was able to take those plays when he got them as a runner. Like he wasn't you didn't have to worry about him a lot, but he could like scramble on 3rd and 4 for 5 yards or take off for a 3rd and 8 for a timely first down.
He actually was top 3 this year in terms of total EPA gained on scrambles because of that. When he scrambles, it is timely.
Yeah, and he was since the concussion. Like I don't think he's doing that as often. I think he kind of got spooked off by the injury, which naturally. And in the Pittsburgh game, he just looked gun shy. He looked scared to scramble, and you can't play scared against this team. You can't play scared against the Patriots defense that very clearly will force you to communicate on the offensive line. They're going to run stunts. They're going to run loops. They're going to play a lot of pass rush games. And if Stroud's going to hold on to the ball, which I do think they want him to because they want to try and hit those explosives, the offensive line has to hold up. And CJ Stroud has to know when to fold. Like you have to let a play die in this game.
He did not let a lot last week. 5 fumbles. It was actually hilarious. We were laughing about before because in the preview of the game, I said, only 2 fumbles all year. I don't expect that to be an issue for CJ Stroud. 5 fumbles. Now, one guy I do expect to have fumble issues, though, Drake May. He had 11 fumbles this year. That is a big part of his game. He had 2 last week. I think both quarterbacks, it's going to come down to who protects the football, in my opinion. Not necessarily who rises above and plays great. I don't think they're for either guy in this one, especially if Nico Collins doesn't go. I don't think there is any rising above and playing great. It's just don't give us the big negative play. Don't fumble the ball in our own territory. Don't throw the pick 6. Don't throw the ugly pick in the red zone. Things of that nature. That's what it's going to come down to, in my opinion, to decide this one, because I agree it's going to look a lot like both games we saw from these two teams last week. In that fourth quarter, it could be single digits for these two teams because of how defensively they just match up really well against these opposing offenses. The Patriots interior, probably the best interior in the NFL right now, going up against this Texans interior that is objectively not. And then the Texans edge rushers going up against these Patriots tackles, and just the corners going up against the Patriots receivers. And it's like, there's no one, again, who can rise above and go win a one-on-one for this Patriots offense. I don't think so. I think this is going to be an all-out slugfest. I think it's going to be a very low scoring game.
With the Texans defense against the Patriots offense, expect a lot of twists and a lot of stunts attacking Jared Wilson and Will Campbell.
Mhm.
And it's sort of where the arm length conversation for Will Campbell comes into play, but it's not for the reason that you think when we talk about arm length and Will Campbell. Because Will Campbell doesn't have the length to make up for anything he lacks on the edge, he has to overset. He has to beat a lot of edges to the spot, which leads to him oversetting, which allows for inside moves, allows for him to get bull rushed, which is what happened against the Chargers against Khalil Mack, who is uniquely like one of the strongest edges in the game. You're going to see that a lot with Will Anderson. You're going to see that a lot with Danielle Hunter. But I do think where it hurts him and Jared Wilson, because Jared Wilson also struggles with power, is because Will Campbell oversets, they're not playing on the same level. And the biggest thing with stunts, protecting and passing off pass rush games up front is being on the same level, the same depth up front. And I don't feel like Wilson and Campbell have been on the same depth at all this season. And it's sort of it's tough because Will Campbell has been pretty good at tackle, but I think Jared Wilson is a center, so he's playing out of position. Maybe Will Campbell might be playing out of position. I'm not really sure.
Don't say that to Patriots fans. They're not going to like it.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they pass off stunts. I do think the Patriots win because if there's one thing Drake May does that CJ Stroud doesn't, is Drake May is fourth in the NFL in total EPA on scrambles. CJ Stroud, if he's not going to scramble in this game, I think that's where Drake May really hurt the Chargers last week, was the scrambles and then the timely checkdowns to Ramondre Stevenson, getting them out the backfield. And so I think if they're going to win this game, it's going to be on the back of Drake May scrambles. And then if Nico Collins doesn't play, I don't think Christian Kirk has the same performance because this defense, this secondary has played so much better. And if you get Gonzalez back, you're kind of locked. You can play Gonzalez on Christian Kirk. You can play Carlton Davis on Christian Kirk. You can play Marcus Jones there. So I think they just have too many answers for what the Texans are going to throw at them.
And I'll add this about Will Campbell. The worry was always, I think the arm length stuff was a little overblown. And I think I said this last spring. It was the actual wingspan. Not only does he have shorter than normal arms for an offensive lineman, he has very tight shoulders for an offensive lineman. He has a 6'5" wingspan. There are starting offensive tackles in the NFL right now that have wingspan over a foot longer than his. It is your sphere of influence. So on those stunts, your ability to adjust and react and, open the shoulder to take that incoming DT is 6 inches smaller than other offensive tackles. And it's not, and so that's 6 inches of leeway that is a big difference a lot of times between picking it up and not picking it up. So that also is the thing, is just your sphere of influence as an offensive tackle when you have that small of a wingspan is just a lot smaller than your average guy. Than, Ariante Ursery's big wingspan guy on the other side. And it shows up on tape, unfortunately. Like, he's great one-on-one. He could do that at offensive tackle, but there are other things where it does show up. And even if Patriots fans will fight for bringing it up. I want to give one shout out though to the Patriots. I just knocked one guy. I want to give a shout out to someone else though. Corey Durden, the journeyman at this point in his career, one of the weirdest career arcs of anyone I can possibly remember. He had 7 pressures, so defensive tackle for the New England Patriots in his 3rd season in the NFL, already on his 4th team in the NFL, was a former UDFA. He had 7 pressures last week, 2 quarterback hits against the Los Angeles Chargers, which makes me as a draft analyst very happy because this guy, as a true sophomore at Florida State back in 2019, he had 45 pressures. That was 4 more than Nnamdi Madubuike that year, who Nnamdi Madubuike was a junior, came out that season. This guy was only a sophomore, came back to school for the COVID year and was literally terrible the rest of his entire collegiate career. I don't know what the heck happened to this guy. And I think it's very indicative. He did 16 bench press reps at his pro day, which oftentimes, if you're a defensive tackle and you only do 16 bench press reps, it's indicative of your work ethic at that point in time. You should be, if you are a 300-pound defensive lineman, you should be doing in the mid-20s at like minimum if you care about how much, care about getting better and care about the weight room. So I think that was like a red flag for me coming out, and that's why I obviously went to UDFA. But the guy was always incredibly talented. For a 290-pounder, the way he moved, you saw early on in his career. And now, finally, it seems like he's either in the right scheme or got his head on straight, making an impact. So I had to give a shout out to Corey Durden. I think one of the cooler stories of this season has been his impact for the New England Patriots.
It's been fun, like seeing some of their UDFA guys, some of the guys that really weren't expecting to make a lot of waves. Elijah Ponder has really sort of stood out. He has 4 sacks this season. Like you said, Corey Durden, like Kairos Tonga. Like there are so many fascinating players on this team and on this defense where they have their stars in Gonzalez, in Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, but they have so many quality guys on this team where like they might not be star-studded like the Texans defense, but they are really, really sound.
Kayvon Chason breakout also at this point in his career is another crazy one. Just like the fact that they're getting productivity out of him, Jalen Hawkins, like it has been a true, I don't want to say no-name defense because they have some big names, but like a lot of the no-name guys, a lot of the guys that you didn't expect to be good on this team, they actually
There's going to be a Kayvon Chason strip sack in this game, and I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick.
And it's going to come after he does the T-Rex. It's going to come after he does the two-hand
T-Rex arms, and I'm just, you know what? Gotta hand it to you. You showed me, and that's my fault.
All right, well, we got to make a pick. Where are we leaning?
If Nico Collins was playing in this game, I think I would lean Texans because I trust in their ability to sort of use the jumbo offensive line and hit in-breakers.
Mm-hmm.
But Nico Collins not clearing protocol at this point, games on Sunday and it's Thursday, I don't think he's going to play. And the fact that he was carted off with a concussion, I don't think he should play. I still think the Texans defense is going to score. But I sort of feel like the Patriots win. Like I feel like the Patriots win a close one. I think they win a tight one. If Drake May scrambles are super effective, I just think the Patriots have enough to keep this offense, keep the Texans offense having to play keep up.
I do think Drake May's legs are one of the more interesting stories about if he runs for a lot of yards, and the Texans defense has given up the most EPA on scrambles this season. I think that's the path to the Patriots winning. I'm picking the Texans to win. I think this defense is too good, and I think they are going to have a game plan that is run heavy, and I think that can work in this game. Jumbo heavy, I think it can work.
I think it can work. It's tough. It really is tough. I hate that I have to choose because I love this Texans defense and I love the mentality that they play with. I tweeted that they are like 11 velociraptors with machine guns. I just, like, with no Nico Collins in this game, I'm a little worried about how the Texans can even like move the football. Like just not scoring, but can they just sustain drives to give that defense a breather?
All right. Enough about defense. Let's talk about some offenses. Rams, 3.5-point favorites on the road against the Chicago Bears. 48.5 is the over-under here. I don't want to hear a word about either of these defenses. No, we could talk a little bit about the defenses, but this one, finally, we have, at least on paper, some points being scored.
This is the death by dig route game. This is going to be like, if you are a offensive coordinator, if you're an armchair quarterback, if you are like a guy that loves scheming up offense, this is the game for you because there are going to be so many points in this game. Like, there's just going to be so much, partially because I do think these defenses are weak in the secondary, but I just think that both these offenses are playing at such a high level, and both these quarterbacks are playing at such a high level where we're going to get so many explosives through the air.
Yeah, I honestly, this one, I don't even have a take. I'm not going to pick like one way or the other because I think it's just going to be back and forth and back and forth and back and like it just feels like it will be a 30-something to 30-something finish. These offenses have answers for both of these defenses whenever they want them. And I think it's interesting that, the Bears' ability in the second half of last week to play man coverage was impressive. Can you do that against Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams? I don't think so. It just doesn't work. Like this, we're talking about a different caliber here. Romeo Dobbs versus Devontae Adams is like still there are levels to this. So I don't think the Bears have answers for the Rams, but then like the Rams' only answer to the Bears is that front four getting after it. But I think the Bears have done so well to avoid opposing pass rushes in terms of schematically shutting them down, giving Caleb Williams time that I'm not sure that makes a big impact in this one either.
I think, like you said, Caleb Williams' ability to scramble sort of negates the pass rush unless you can use like the pocket pushers. And this is the difference in Jared Verse and Byron Young versus other pass rushers where they're going to compress the pocket and their quickness will come from the defensive tackles. If they can rush, if they can have a maintained rush, I could see it working. But the issue is, again, I keep going back to the Lions game for the Rams, where Amon-Ra St. Brown averaged almost 4 yards per route run. And they just hammered the Rams with dig routes, with deep posts. And it's the Jameson Williams touchdown. They ran on Mills, where you'd have a little inbreaker, and then you have Williams run the post behind it. I don't think the DBs for the Rams can run with the Bears. But on the other side of the ball, this is why the Rams got Devontae Adams. For teams that play a lot of man coverage, he is their separator. And with Devontae Adams fully healthy, I don't know how much man coverage you really want to play against this Rams team because they will shred you in man coverage. But where I think it really will help is with their man coverage last week against the Packers, they were able to get pressure up front when they switched that man coverage. They were able to run a lot more pass rush games. You're going to have to pressure Matthew Stafford, but you can't blitz, which is also the issue when you play the Rams, because if you can't get pressure when you blitz, it's going to be tough. And if Kevin Dotson plays in this game, it'll be even tougher because they can just sit on you in 13 personnel and run this game out.
Yeah, I think that's why I probably favor the Rams at the end of the day. It's just because I can see their defensive line getting home in this Bears offensive line. Don't see the Bears returning the favor. Austin Booker emergence has been great. I think he's close. I think next year we'll be talking about a true impact guy. But in this game and with how well the Rams do at just protecting their offensive line as well with all those tight ends, I think the Bears are going to have a whale of a time stopping the Rams, where I think the Rams can at least get a few stops themselves.
Yeah, I think the Rams will be able to get some stops. And the biggest thing I worry about for the Bears is they have been the king of the fourth quarter comebacks this year. How far down can you go against this Rams team before you start to get up off the ground?
Mm-hmm.
Like how far down can you get against the Rams before it's like, okay, like we got to actually start turning this game up now a little bit, because the reason the Bears go down is because they can't run the football. So you saw like against the Packers, if their run game isn't working, they have to go to the tricky stuff with DJ Moore doing sprint draws and some of the reverse plays. Like you have to get the ground game going, but I don't know if they'll be able to do that because this Rams defense is, I'd say they're better at stopping the run than defending the pass this season.
And I'll just say this also about the Rams offense. I feel like they are not one to take the foot off the gas pedal. They get a lead. That doesn't mean they go into a shell. That means you actually might get some more shots on. You might get more play action down the football field with this Rams offense. So for all those reasons, I'm going Rams and I'm going over.
I'm also going to go Rams. I do think this game is going to be close. I think it's going to be an over. I hope they don't. I hope the Bears don't go down early in this game because I don't think they can come back from this one.
All right, we're going to take a quick break after that. We're going to dive into the 2026 NFL Draft. The deadline came and went. We have all the declarees outside of the national championship guys in. So we're going to evaluate the strongest position groups right after this.
Critics agree Landman is a hit.
We roll the dice one last time.
Men die. Oil companies don't.
Ooh, JP, it's here. Draft season is almost upon us. A few more weeks. I'll be heading a week from today. I'll be heading down to Dallas for the Shrine Bowl, then to Mobile for the Senior Bowl. Very excited to see both because obviously with juniors in there now, you get to see pretty much every guy outside of your lock top 20 picks. And then even some of those guys end up going there for a day or two as well. So very excited to see that. And with that in mind, we're going to evaluate this draft class. We had been going through some positions, some of the stronger ones throughout the season, but now that we have all the names in, we're going to go from worst to first in this draft class. And I'll give you my initial thoughts on how these classes rank year on year in terms of just how strong they are. You know, it might be the 11th best class, but in some years, the 11th best class is still a good crop, depending on, if it's a very strong class or not. This year, I'm just going to say off the top, it's not great. Not great. And the position that is so not great that I couldn't believe some guys came back to school in this draft class that could have declared. It's the running back room, where it is Jeremiah Love. And then there truly may not be Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back, who's going to go somewhere, I'd guess, the top half of the first round. He's that type of prospect. There may not be another starter in this draft class. That is how weak it is. For me, RB2 in this class is the other Notre Dame running back, Jadarian Price. And he's quite a bit down the board for me. And even he is kind of like a running back by committee sort of guy. I'm not sure he's a full-on starter in the NFL. So it's Jeremiah Love. You may not see another one come off the board until the third round, and you may only see one or two guys come off the board in the third round. It is a tough draft class.
I'm actually kind of a big fan of Jonah Coleman, running back from Washington. I like how he runs the ball. I think if I had a RB2 behind Jeremiah Love in this class, I think it's Jonah Coleman. I told my friends, he is a very ethical runner. He's not going to try and run around you. He's not going to try and deviate from his gap. He's going to run to that gap and he's going to run somebody over. And I appreciate that for somebody who's like 5'9" and like 228 pounds. I think you can build something out of that style of runner. It might have to be in a committee, but I do think you can build something out of that style of runner. But like you said, this running back class has a lot of question marks. Justice Haynes, we just showed him, he went back and transferred to Georgia Tech. So I was sort of like, why didn't you enter the draft at this point? But I have a lot of questions about this class, and a lot of it sort of rotates around the Penn State guys who were supposed to be like near the top of this class never really like panned out. So seeing how the draft and how evaluators look at Nick Singleton, who was one of them, and Katron Allen, I think that'll really help us round out what they really think of this class.
I was going to ask you your favorite running back. I'll ask you your favorite for each position. Not like necessarily the best guy, but like your favorite. You went with Jonah Coleman. I obviously have to go with the two Notre Dame guys. When there's that good of a running back room. I remember I was at the USC game this year and I texted one of my friends. I was like, we may have a 2005 Auburn situation on our hands here at Notre Dame. Now, I don't think it's going to be like that. 2005 Auburn was when Ronnie Brown and Carnell Cadillac Williams both went top 5 in that draft. That ain't going to happen this year. It's a different era, but you may have the Notre Dame backs be the 1 and 2 in this draft class.
Yeah, with Jadarian Price, I'm really excited to dive deeper into his tape. Obviously, Jeremiah Love is incredible. His ability to his creativity at the second level is super cool. Like I have seen people like say it's like similar to Reggie Bush, and I'm not going to go that far because Reggie Bush was awesome, but I do think Jeremiah Love is like if you gave like a 10-year-old like a Madden game and just had him use the running back the entire time. He's gonna whiff sometimes. Like there are gonna be times where it doesn't look great, but when it looks awesome, it's gonna look so cool.
It's a great way to put it. Let's get to 10. Quarterbacks. Quarterback class is depleted. All the guys we thought were going to be in it, they're like, I think I'll come back to school. So what could have been, if we had Lenore Sellers, if we had Archman, if we had Dante Moore, which was kind of the wave, 2018 or so, 2019, it felt like if you were a draft prospect at quarterback, you just came out. You didn't really haggle. The money was good enough. You went. Those guys would probably all go in the first round if they came out. They all come back to school. So we're left with Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, and then probably not another guy in this quarterback class until the 5th round, unless Trinidad Chambliss is forced to come out. I mean, unless he doesn't get his waiver and comes out in the draft.
I might have this one below the running back class, honestly.
True.
Because the thing with Ty Simpson is not only did the accuracy profile dip over the last half of the season. If you follow Corey Kennan on social media, he does a great job charting QBs, and he's charted Ty Simpson's entire season. It's not great that a first-year starter has had multiple injuries, including like a very bad back injury at that size. That's really worrisome to me when it comes to Ty Simpson's evaluation, because if this is your first time starting and you cannot stay healthy, how is this going to translate to an 18-game or 18-week NFL season? How is that going to translate when the guys are bigger and faster at the NFL level and your body just can't hold up? I honestly thought if anybody were to stay versus declare, I thought Dante Moore would declare and Ty Simpson would stay, because it felt like Simpson needed more time than Dante Moore did. Obviously, this was before the playoff run, but it's a really odd draft class. And I think the hype in the early part of the season was obviously if Lenore Sellers, if Arch Manning entered, both guys stay. But I do think we're going to start seeing a lot more of guys deciding to stay in college because the NFL wants to see guys who have reps. And if you don't have reps, it's not gonna work out.
Ty Simpson this year, broken ribs, herniated disc, elbow bursitis. First time he ever played football.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's not great. Like it really isn't great, especially again, he's sort of a thin player. Like he's a thin quarterback. He's not super big, and you don't have a lot of experience. The injuries really scare me, and then the accuracy outside the numbers. That's all. Like when you mix all of that, I don't know how you can be a first-round quarterback, but he's probably going to go in the first round because there is no other quarterback. Because I mean,
yes,
if Trinidad Chambliss doesn't get that waiver, like that makes this a little bit more interesting. But even then, I wonder if the NFL's sort of done with drafting short quarterbacks, given how Bryce Young has gone and given how it ended with Kyler Murray. Like how high are we drafting a quarterback who is maybe 6 feet tall?
And Dylan Gabriel and Baker Mayfield, and like we've just seen it never quite completely hit. Like really catch. Russell Wilson, your best example, but even him, like he's a weird quarterback. He has limitations. So yeah, I agree. He would be your day 2-ish quarterback in this class, in my opinion, if he is in it. But just because of the desperation, because of where teams are, because I do think that when you saw Ty Simpson fully healthy, it still did look good. The injuries are concerning, obviously, but I think there was a stretch of the season where it was like, okay, Ty Simpson is a legit prospect, and it came before a lot of the injuries started to pile up. So if you are the Browns sitting at pick 24, the Rams sitting at the back of the first round with Stafford, one of these teams, And the value proposition is, them or like an off-ball linebacker, because we'll get to the linebacker class, but like there's going to be a lot of off-ball linebackers drafted highly this year. I think a lot of those teams might say, let's take a shot on this quarterback. All right, offensive tackle is number 9. And this is kind of my bottom tier of 3, where these are just ugly classes. These are not the classes you want to find talent in. If you are in need of these positions, running back, quarterback, offensive tackle is my bottom tier. The top true offensive tackle in this draft class may very well be Caleb Lomu from Utah. And I was not particularly impressed with his development from last year to this year. And that's like Spencer Fanta from Utah, Francis Mauigoa from Miami, Caden Proctor from Alabama may all end up higher on my board, but I think they're all kind of ideally at the NFL guards. You could give them all a shot at tackle in the right scheme, whatever, but they all profile to me just more as prototypical guard bodies. So it's a great class to need a tackle guard convert, not a great class to get your true offensive tackle.
That's sort of where it's sort of inverse of last year, where I thought last year maybe like that was if you need a tackle, the best tackles are probably guards in the NFL. But this year is truly like the best tackles are probably guards.
Yes.
And that's where you're going to find most of those guys. If there's anybody that really sort of fascinates me, I like Monroe Freeling, and I liked his tape over the last part of the season. He declared for the draft, really young, 6'7", 315, athletic guy. He might need just some more reps, which feels very similar to Caleb Lomu, but he has the athleticism. He has the hands that really can, I could see Monroe Freeling sneaking into round 1 because teams need a tackle, but there's going to be a lot of projection with this draft class at tackle.
That's a good way to put it. There's just not. I think I came around on last year's class, and I remember the top 3. By draft day, I was like, hey, it's actually those top 3 guys. I just don't think you can go wrong with either. That being absolutely Will Campbell, Armand Membu, and Kelvin Banks. This year, there's not any guy I'm saying that about where it's like you can't go wrong with. I think I could see Caleb Lomu going wrong. I could see Monroe Freeling going wrong. I could see Maui Noah, Fano, Proctor all going wrong if you kept them at offensive tackle. So there's no sure thing in this class. My favorite down the board, though, I like Max Iannatra, the Arizona State offensive tackle. I'm going to be banging the table for him, I think, this draft class, just because I think I've even said this on the show before. The guy didn't play football before he got to college. He is a unique prospect in that the things it takes to be an offensive tackle physically it's a very high bar to clear, right? To be an offensive tackle in the NFL. It's one of the most physically demanding positions just in terms of pure and unchangeable traits. And all of them, in my opinion, he has. It's just guys who played a lot of football. So he's going to be the guy that I'm like, I'll take him in the first round. I'll take that chance on a guy with all that he has at his disposal, figuring it out.
Yeah, again, it's even though like he's a little bit older, he didn't play football until he got to college. So the runway for growth is going to be really long. And that's sort of where we get with, like, we talk about Caleb Lomu, Monroe Freeling, Iannatra. Like, there's a lot of room for growth with all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having a patient coaching staff and a patient offensive line coach will really help those guys turn into stars.
All right, next position group, tight ends. It's Kenny Sadiq from Oregon. It's Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt, Max Clare from Ohio State, Michael Trigg from Baylor. That might be it for your top 100 guys. Do you think anyone else sneaks into the top 100 in this draft class? I just, it's a fine class, but it's definitely below average year on year. Just if you compare it to last year's class, there's no one close to Colson Loveland or Tyler Warren in this draft class, in my opinion. Sadiq is much more of a wild card than either of those guys. He's closer to like a Noah Fant-esque prospect than he is. Like, just go to that draft class, a TJ Hawkinson, where you just know that guy's going to translate to the league.
I think with this class, there's a little bit of, especially tight end, you're not going to get a blocker. And unless you are going after a guy like maybe maybe Daquan Wright from Ole Miss might be your best like blocker of the group. If you want, if you want like that true dual threat tight end, I think you're gonna go get a guy like that. But even Kenyon Sneak is not a inline blocker. He is more of a move tight end. You look at Eli Stowers, he is not an inline blocker. Like this class doesn't have a lot of the true dual threats at position like the last year's class did. But I also think that this year's class doesn't really have a lot of dynamic pass catchers like last year's class did. I think you're going to find some reliable guys. I think Stowers, I think Sadiq can obviously be reliable. And one of my favorite guys down the board is Oscar Delp from Georgia, who I think Oscar Delp is going to be a much better pro than college player because he was asked to pass protect and run block a whole lot more than catch passes because they needed him there. But when he showed he has like really good athleticism and can go out and catch passes, he just never did it a lot. It's sort of a dude, just trust me evaluation.
Dude, I hated his tape because of that. I'm like, damn, he really improved over the course of his career as a run blocker. Why do they never throw him the football? It's like, but then they actually never throw him the football.
It's the Mike Bobo problem. But I do think if you're gonna get a guy late down the board, I think going and getting a guy like Oscar Delp on day 3 might be better when it comes to value than drafting like an Eli Stowers on day 2.
Most intriguing guy in this class to me is easily, though, Michael Trigg from Baylor. Freakishly gifted dude. I mean, he literally just plays wide receiver at Baylor, even though he's 6'5", 250 with a 7-foot wingspan. So crazy athletic ability for a tight end, great ball skills, but like inconsistent hands. He can make some crazy catches and he'll drop some easy ones. And then doesn't even attempt to block. He has no interest in blocking. But like the guy is so gifted that can you get him motivated to block? Can you get him more consistent? Because kind of like what I was saying about offensive tackles, there's a traits threshold where it works. He meets the traits threshold where it works. Like he has the ability that can be a 1,000-yard-esque receiving tight end, but he's bounced around to a few different places in college already. Only this year did it really turn on for him. Not sure what you're going to get at the next level with him, but definitely a name to watch.
Yeah, like with Trigg, it's so fascinating because he has all the athletic tools to be a good blocker. He has huge hands and he has long arms, and he has the tools to be a good blocker. He just doesn't want to. Exactly. And that's always the toughest evaluation because like you could say like if you're not good at it, but you are an effort blocker, I can turn you into something. But blocking is as much want to as it is technique. And if you don't want to do it, I don't know how often you can be on the field.
Let's get to the cornerback class, which is also in this tier. I may actually be selling this cornerback class short. Now that I'm looking at the guys in this, there's not a ton of true stars in this cornerback class. I still have the best one being the guy who didn't play this fall, Jermod McCoy from Tennessee. Still the top cornerback on my board based off of just his sophomore tape, which I thought was awesome. But after him, I think there's a lot of day 2 corners on this class. It actually is chock full of day 2 corners. So maybe I would bump it up a tier in retrospect. But I think we see Mansour Delane from LSU go first round. I think we see Avion Terrell from Clemson go first round. That's it in terms of guys I feel good proclaiming our first rounders at this point in time. But it's still, in my opinion, a below average year-on-year class.
I could maybe see a guy like Colton Hood sneaking into the back half of the first round with a good like postseason circuit. Maybe Brandon Cisse sneaks in to the back half of the first round, but I wouldn't really put a lot of trust into like I'm not gonna bang the table for Brandon Cisse at this point, or I might for Colton Hood because I think he has the potential to be really good in man coverage. But my guy's D'Angelo Pons. I know he's 5'9".
Oh, that was gonna be my guy too. Let's go.
I know he's like 5'9". I don't care. Captain of the all dog in him team. I'll play him where if he wants to play outside corner, I'll let him try. Because he truly he plays through the whistle. He plays through the hands really well. He's a willing tackler. You can play him in the slot if you wanted to. There's just so many answers to questions in your secondary if you just have D'Angelo Pons. Because, again, he's going to go out there and play 110%. And so I feel sort of like that for Avion Terrell as well. Like when you force 5 fumbles as a corner, you are going to be on my radar. And he also plays the same way, but might be a little bigger.
Yeah, I do really like Avion Terrell as well, but I was going to have my guy in this class be D'Angelo Ponds. I would bet he declares, but we'll see, because he actually might have more value in college given that he's 5'9", 170. He's not going to go top 50.
Did you see they actually named a pond in Bloomington after D'Angelo Ponds?
I did not. It's called the D'Angelo Pond now.
It's called D'Angelo's Pond.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, his tape against Jeremiah Smith is legitimately good. Like at the goal line, shutting him down. It's just like, dude, he's giving up 40 pounds, 6 inches. It doesn't make sense. Guy is built different. Love his tape. I hope he makes it in the NFL. Those are the kinds of guys that I always root for. And so D'Angelo Ponds, worth noting. See if he declares. All right, safety class is up next on this one, where you have Caleb Downs from Ohio State, top 10 pick. I don't think I'd be surprised if he doesn't go specifically in this class. After him, I think there's actually a handful of day 2 safeties, whether it's Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, who declared, Kamari Ramsey from USC, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo, maybe even AJ Halsey from LSU. There's a few guys. Genesis Smith from Arizona I like a lot too. So it's not a terrible class of safeties. In retrospect, like I said, safety and corner, I probably should have bumped up a little bit in these rankings. But it's still not a banner year-on-year class, I'll say. I think it's just an average safety class.
I'm fascinated by Kamari Ramsey and Keontae Scott, especially as slot defenders.
I didn't even mention Keontae Scott. He's my favorite in the class.
I love Keontae Scott as a nickel. I think he's a madman as a blitzer. And you could see that Corey Heatherman, defensive coordinator at Miami, has weaponized Keontae Scott as a blitzer. He will run running backs over as a blitzer. I think that's awesome, and I think it fits, especially with a lot of teams choosing to play sort of in the style of Mike McDonald's defenses where you're bringing nickel pressure all the time. I think that fits really well. I think Kamari Ramsey has that slot and deep safety versatility, but I love Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Like that dude, like he does a little bit of everything well, and he might be like 6'3", like at the same time. Like I would love for any team would want to have McNeil-Warren on their team. He just checks so many boxes as a deep safety.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, he's such a good run defender. I mean, his billing from depth is just like textbook. I think he's just going to be a damn good football player. So there's actually, the more I look at the safety class, I would bump it up to a 4 on this list. I screwed up. Put him up higher. I think there's actually some talent in the safety class to be had, especially when you consider that there is a guy who's going to go top half of the first round, which most years that's not the case, right? We haven't had that since it's Kyle Hamilton, the last guy to go top half of the first round, and then he was the first guy since Jamal Adams to do so. Safety just doesn't go drafted that highly. So to have one of those, I think it's actually probably an above average year-on-year safety class, the more I look at it. Let's get to the next group where I put wide receivers and defensive ends in a same tier. I think they are both, I would call them average classes by their standards, potentially below average for both. Definitely not above average classes. There's talent to be had. I wouldn't say there's any blue chip, like true high-end blue chip guy in either class. The closest I would put to that's Ruben Bain in the defensive end class. There's a handful of first rounders, but there's not a lot of guys, again, after Ruben Bain where I'm like, this is a Pro Bowler year on year. I think Jordan Tyson might be the closest I'd say to that, but even he has his concerns, the Arizona State wide receiver. So both are solid classes. There's talent to be had, but I don't think there's a lot of sure things in either.
I actually think I would put receiver higher. Okay. And I think it's because I think the top 4 or 3 to 4 guys in the receiver class are better overall than the top 3 to 4 guys in the defensive end in the edge class.
Okay.
And mainly it's because I freaking love Mekhi Lemon. I watched this tape a few days ago, and I was like, "Yep, this guy is going to be a star in the NFL." I know, again, like 5'10". I know he's not like going to be the fastest, but he is a professional football player, a professional route runner. He does so good on the corner posts. He attacks blind spots really well, and you wouldn't think that he's as small as he is with the way that he plays above the rim. He goes up and gets passes. He's dropped less passes than his teammate Jacoby Lane, and Jacoby Lane is like 6'4". So I think I love Mekhi Lemon. I would argue that even though Jordan Tyson might be like the consensus wide receiver one, I do think there's a very good argument for Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon to both be wide receiver one. I actually kind of have Mekhi Lemon as my one right now.
Oh,
It's crazy for me because most times I guess my blind spot when it comes to scouting is big, tall, fast. If you're big, tall, fast, I'm probably gonna like you. It's a big reason why I like Chris Bell from Louisville. But Mekhi Lemon is just such a professional receiver. Like you can plug him in day one, and I know he's going to produce. Like it's very similar to Emeka Egbuka at Ohio State. Now, can he be a true wide receiver one? I think so, but it's going to take finding the right team with the right coordinator. But the dude has all the makings of a star in the NFL.
If you like big, tall, fast, have you watched Jeff Caldwell's tape by chance?
Not yet.
Dude. So I know his agent. He's 6'5", 215. His agent said in training he's broad jumped 11.9 and vert jumped 46 inches and should run a 4.35. So this guy, and when I watch my tape, there are some times where I'm just like, his acceleration for a guy 6'5", 215 is some of the craziest I've ever seen. And now he wasn't super productive. He transferred from Lindenwood to Cincinnati.
I was saying he transferred from Lindenwood.
So in his 1 year there, I think he only had like 600 something yards, but it was all like big plays. And so he'll be one of the more interesting prospects in this draft class, because I would bet right now that guy's a top 100 pick in this class specifically, even if he's not super productive. Very much looking forward to seeing him down in Dallas at Shrine Bowl.
I'm also kind of fascinated by Denzel Boston, the receiver from Washington. I think he's faster than what people give him credit for, but also not like a burner. I don't think he's going to run 4.4s. I think he'll probably run if he runs 4.4s, it'll be 4.49 or something.
He's a long speed, not a short speed, not a quick guy.
Yeah, I think he's gonna win in like the 20 to 30 yard range.
Yeah,
but I think he's got a little bit more. Like he kills on over routes, and in the red zone. So you sort of think of guys like Alec Pierce and what Alec Pierce has grown into, like maybe like what Cortland Sutton has sort of grown into for the Broncos this year. But I think Boston's going to be a guy where you bring him in and he has a specific role in year one, but he's a guy where like maybe by year 2, year 3, you have a quality player on your hands.
I do think there's a healthy group of second wave wide receivers in this, whether it's Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M as well, who I think is an awesome separator, even if his hands are a little suspect at this point.
It is very much the Zay Flowers conundrum.
Yes, he will be that type of wide receiver. Let's get to the tiers. So 3 positions where I think are above average classes. I think DT and interior offensive linemen, these are actually above average classes. And DT, you might not be saying it's anything special. And I would agree with you. I just think we've had such bad DT classes for so long that any talent, any sort of first round talent, and I think we have at least 2 first rounders in this class, could be up to like 4, depending on how guys test, whatever. But I think Peter Woods from Clemson is a surefire first rounder at this point. Caleb Banks from Florida, I would imagine, goes first round simply based off of guys crazy gifted for a DT. After that, I think you'll have a healthy day too of like Caden McDonald from Ohio State, Kristen Miller from Georgia, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, Dominique Orange from Iowa State. There's a lot of, I just think that in and of itself is more than we've seen in a while. So that's why I put it in this tier, even if like there's going to be a lot more wide receivers, defensive ends drafted than DTs. I just think it's just been so down for so long at DT that any sort of talent makes this a plus class.
I'm fascinated how the NFL evaluates Caleb Banks because he's a senior, older prospect coming off injury. But the games that he played this season, the LSU game, the Tennessee game, he looked like a top 10 pick. He looked like the best defensive tackle in the class.
Yeah.
And I think with Peter Woods, I think Peter Woods is immensely, immensely talented. But I do think there's some questions to be had about what happened this year at Clemson. I think you'd ask the same question for TJ Parker's teammate on the defensive line. Like what happened this year that made it so difficult for you to flash at Clemson? And
Woods' frame is not. It's like a below average frame. Like Caleb Banks has an elite frame. Peter Woods, it was more like, hey, look at how well this guy moves. Look at how strong he is for a sophomore. So he's not going to do himself any favors by showing up to the combine and measuring it. He's going to be like 6'3" with probably 32.5-inch arms, something like that.
Yeah, he's very squatty. Yeah. Like he's got a sort of a wider frame, but it's not like super long. Mm-hmm. Amari Washington going back to school completely tanked the draft for me at defensive tackle. I was super high on him, but I'm really fascinated by Christian Miller from Georgia, another like really young Georgia defender, ready-made run defender. I think he has some athletic upside when it comes to pass rushing, but Georgia doesn't really ask their defensive linemen to rush the passer.
Dude, I was gonna say this is every Georgia scouting report. It's like he can play the run. Will he rush the passer? Dude, who knows? Like
if you have a good defensive line coach, maybe he will rush the passer. But if you want him for first, second down, I think he can do that. Kane McDonald's the same way. But this defensive tackle class has a lot more nose tackles than last year. Last year had more 3 techs. This year it's going to be 1 tech heavy.
All right, let's get to interior offensive line where I said a lot of names of the tackle class: Spencer Fano, Francis Mauinoa, Caden Proctor. Like if you need a guard, you're going to take one of these tackles and move to a guard. There's a lot of names to be had. I even like Vega Ioane from Penn State, kind of in that mix as well. Could go top 20, and he's a true guard. He's probably your best guy who played guard last year, who will play guard in the NFL. Emmanuel Pregnon's a pretty solid guard prospect in his own right from Oregon. Probably more day 2. At center, Connor Lew from Auburn, Jake Slaughter from Florida, potential top 100 guys. I think there's a healthy day 2. Chase Basantis from Texas A&M. DeKeelan Rutledge, I think he's in this class as well. Georgia Tech, I'd expect to go on day 2. Like there's a solid day 2 of interior offensive line prospects as well, making this a pretty good year-on-year class, in my opinion, especially when you consider how many guys probably go first round in this year.
I'm glad you mentioned Chase Basantis because that's my guy in this draft class at the position. He's got such strong hands, really smart pass protector. I'm in on him, especially on day 2 as a Jaguars fan who might be looking for interior offensive line help. I hope they get Basantis day 2. Connor Lew is going to be a really fascinating eval because, again, super duper young and coming off an injury, but he was really impressive in his tape that he played. And I've been saying since the beginning of the season, I love Keelan Rutledge. If we were giving out awards for player most likely to get into a fight in the NFL, Keelan Rutledge is that guy, but he's also the guy that I would want on my team. Every team needs a Keelan Rutledge, but you only need one Keelan Rutledge.
you want him to play offensive line. You don't want him playing quarterback, probably, more likely than not. There's certain positions where it doesn't help, but O-line, definitely one of them. All right, last position. And this is, for my money, the best class that I've seen at this position. I started really doing scout in 2015 draft. So this is 12 drafts in. And this is the best linebacker class I think I've ever seen. There are so many good linebackers in this draft class. I think we could see, 5 first rounders in this year. Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, the Ohio State duo, they could go top 10. CJ Allen from Georgia, Anthony Hill from Texas, Josiah Trotter from Missouri, Jake Golday from Cincinnati. It goes on and on. Harold Perkins from LSU gets lost in this class, but everyone remembers his freshman year, what he did, rushing the passer, still an insanely gifted athletic talent. It's an awesome linebacker class. If you need a linebacker, this might be the year I actually advocate drafting one in the first round.
I'm so intrigued by what the NFL thinks of Arvell Reese. It's between linebacker or edge. I might have him as an edge, even though I think the pass rush upside's a little bit more limited. He's a very raw pass rusher. at edge, but his run defense at the edge is so good.
Yeah.
It's so good for somebody who's supposed to be an off-ball linebacker. Like he's a guy where if you have a lot of defenses who like to play your linebackers on the edge and like get to a 5-man front, you can do that with him. I think his pass rush tape sometimes looks really good, but again, he never gets those reps as a pass rusher. So if you want to call him an edge, I call him an edge. Maybe like I think it makes sense. I would also argue maybe Sonny Styles is better. Like Sonny Styles is also so freaking good at 6'4". He's the same size as Arvell Reese, but being a former safety, he's got a lot more chops in coverage, better route recognition, and you cannot keep him blocked. And I say the same thing about Josiah Trotter, Josiah Trotter's my guy in this class. Any first round draft, any mock draft I do, I'm going to include Josiah Trotter because I think he's going to go really high. He's got NFL lineage. He gets off of blocks really well. And in the NFL right now, I think having off-ball linebackers who can fit the run is going to matter so much more than your overhangs who have range and space.
Mm-hmm. I think him and CJ Allen are very similarly in that regard, and that those guys get in the backfield. I mean, like they know how to read keys and, as Sean Payton loves to say, attack downhill. To take it full circle here, but it's a great linebacker class, man. I don't think you can go wrong with a lot of those guys. A lot of different body types, a lot of different flavors. Whatever you need for your defense, you'll probably find it in this year's linebacker class. There you have it. There's our breakdown of the positional groups. Looking forward to diving into more granular on this class as things goes on, more team needs as the season ends here and we get towards free agency. But very happy that you guys could tune in. Until next time, we'll be back Sunday night breaking down all the games. Keep pushing.